Wealth is the gap between your income and your ego. Hey, what's going on, guys? Happy New Year. But I'm excited to introduce to you a new content series entitled Financial Freedom Fastlane. The quicker you get to your dream life, the longer you get to live it. Now, while the core of my content is centered around, personal finance, wealth building, and entrepreneurship, at the end of the day, the real important part of the message is freedom. It just so happens that money in the society that we live in is the fuel that you use to amplify the things that you enjoy, right? So if you're someone that likes to give, the more money you have, the more that you can give, and the grander scale that you can give. If you're someone that likes to travel, the more money you have, the more that you can travel. Not to say that you can't do those things right where you're at, but I wanted to just really have more time to unpack my methodologies, my thought process, and my overall thesis on how I think about becoming financially free. And the reason why it's called Financial Freedom Fastlane is because I want you to get there as fast as possible, right? There's so much rhetoric online about investing $400 a month, and at age 65, you'll have enough money to retire. And I don't know about you, but I'm not with the 40-40-40 plan, right? I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the 40-40-40 plan, but the 40-40-40 plan is where you work 40 hours a week, right? You make about $40,000 a year. Well, actually, I'll take that back. You work 40 hours a week. You do it for 40 years, only to retire on about $40,000 in income. Now, you might be wondering how did I arrive at those numbers? If I were to ask you, what is a magic number that would make you feel safe at retirement? Most people usually start around $1 million. And even though for some people $1 million seems kind of far, right, as a target, like, man, if I could have at least $1 million, I feel like I would be good. So there's this calculation that says, in order to not run out of money, you can safely withdraw 4% from your portfolio. It's the safe withdrawal rule, right? So if you multiply 0.04, right, by $1 million, you'll see that produces 40,000 in income. So you work for 40 years, right? 40 hours a week, only to be able to live off 40,000 in retirement, which is going to be 30, 40 years from now, right? Depending upon where you are on the journey. And that logic and methodology just never seemed logical to me, right? So I wanted to share the things that have served me well on how I've been able to expedite that journey. And what I've realized is that it's really distilled down to 3 core things, and 2 of them are bonuses, just like from a comprehensive financial planning perspective, but I like to call them the macros of money, right? Number 1 is understanding the lever of how much making more money has an impact on your ability to achieve financial independence. Because here's the real truth. When people are telling you to save $400 a month, $4,800 a year, that's really because that's what most people can afford based upon the income that they're making, right? The median household income is $50,000 a year. If you take 10% of $50,000 a year, what is that? Right? That's $5,000. $400 a month times 12, that's $4,800. That's $200 shy of 10% of your income. And here's the real cold hard truth. Most people aren't even saving 10% of their income, right? So that number might be far-fetched. At $50,000 in income, you might be saving $400 a month if you're making more than that. But let's just keep it simple, right? We know the median household income is about $50,000. We know that you've heard countless Instagram and YouTube and TikTok gurus tell you to tuck money away for the next 40 years, right? And it just so happens that in 40 years, right, tucking $400 a month away is going to be right around $1 million, right? You can do the math. You can go to any compound interest calculator, invest for $4,800 a year at 10% rate of return, which is extremely generous for some of you guys, right? And 40-year time horizon. It'll be anywhere between 1 million and 1.2 or something like that, right? And so if we realize that in all actuality, it's not about the $1 million, right, and the timeline it takes to get there, it's about how can I accelerate that timeline by increasing my savings rate. The way you increase your savings rate is by making more money. Because let's do the math. If you are making $50,000 and you save 10% of your income, that's $5,000. If you double your income to $100,000, and you probably could double your savings rate, right, to 20%. But in doubling your savings rate on doubling your income, you're quadrupling the amount of money that you're saving based upon you making going from 50,000 to 100,000. Here's the math, right? If I make 100,000, 20%, right, of 100,000 is what? 20,000. So if I'm able to save 20,000, that's 4 times greater than the amount of money that I was able to save when I was only making 50. And that's going to have a much bigger impact than almost anything else that I can do, even substantial rates of return, right? But that can only happen if you are a good steward of your money. One thing I like to say is making money is in action. You just go out and do it, right? Keeping money is a behavior, and maximizing money is a skill, right? Because the reason why keeping money is a behavior is because it's based upon your decision making, right? You have the ability to decide if you're going to eat out every day or eat at home. You have the ability to decide if I'm going to live a modest lifestyle or if I'm going to flex, if I'm going to live within my means or live outside of my means. That is a behavior. It has nothing to do with how much money you make, right? And so it's a behavior that's tied to your mentality. So there's a lot of magic that can happen there as well, because it doesn't matter how much money you make. If you don't have a money management machine in order to nurture and take care of that money and keep it, you'll just have a hole in your bucket. And I want to do an analogy. I can't do it here. I'll do it on another video. But think of like you having a cup, right, that has a hole in the bottom. And you only have a little bit of water to pour in the cup, but it still has a hole in there. The water is going to leak out, but it's just going to be slow because it's a little bit of water, right? It'll just incrementally leak out. If you have that same cup, but you have double the amount of water, more water is just going to come out faster, right? If you have a hole in the cup. So that is essentially, bad money management. If you have a little bit of money, right, you're still losing money. It's just not much to lose. If you have a lot of money, right, then you're losing money at a faster rate. That's all that happens, right? So I want to make sure that you guys understand the framework for how to manage and nurture your money. So you'll see a lot of that in my videos as well. One quote that I love, I think it's the name of the book is The Psychology of Money. And he had a quote in there, and the quote said, "Wealth is the gap between your income and your ego," right? What you make and how you decide to use it based upon your behavior. And a lot of times your behavior is conditioned based upon programming of what society tells you should be spending your money on. We've all heard about keeping up with the Joneses, right? So that's a very important part of this strategy, is making more, right? But more importantly, also managing it very effectively. Because when we think about making more money, right, if you double your savings rate, you can quadruple the amount of money that you save, right? And then so on and so forth. So if you're quadrupling it, then you're constantly reducing the timeline, right? From, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, I'll get them in post-production, but you go from like 40 to, I want to say like 22 to 14 to 7, right? If you go for income jumps from 50,000 to 100,000, $250,000 to $500,000, right? And so guys, it's very, very powerful to be able to not only make more money, but which I'm gonna teach you how to do, but also to have a great money management structure in place so that when you make it, you have that money available to allocate towards investing. And of course, last but not least, I want to make sure that you guys have a really strong understanding of how to maximize your money, right? What ways to invest, because if you invest in the stock market, it's great, and the more money you have to invest is great. But what I've learned over the years, even as someone who manages people's money in the stock market and have a lot of money invested in the stock market is a great tool for hedging inflation, for capital preservation and appreciation, but it's not necessarily the most efficient tool from a cash flow perspective. Because here's the thing, if it takes me $1 million locked up to produce 40,000 in cash flow, one would argue that that's not super efficient. Is it very passive? Absolutely, right? Arguably, there's nothing more passive than the stock market, right? You tuck the money away. Now, granted, you got to rebalance your portfolio and all that good stuff. but arguably from an effort standpoint, it's one of the most truly passive things, right? But from a cash flow perspective, it's not the most efficient, right? So how can we still invest in the stock market, but then leverage our portfolio to buy assets that are more efficient from a cash flow perspective? Assets like investing in businesses that you own but do not run, right? Because when you think about the stock market, you are investing in businesses, you just own a much smaller share. But imagine having a majority stake or a much larger stake in a business privately held that's going to produce 3.5 times the cash flow. Now, what does that mean? Why is that so powerful? This is the whole thesis on how I can help you become financially independent 3 times faster. If you have an investment instrument that can produce 3 times the cash flow from this in comparison to the stock market, that means that you can invest the same amount of money and get 3 times the cash, or you can invest a third of the money and get the same amount of cash. So for those who are worried about hitting an accumulation target or having enough saved up, if you have efficient vehicles from a cash flow perspective, you don't have to have as much saved. Or if you know that you want more money, you can still have those aggressive goals of saving and investing more money, but knowing that now you're going to have 3.5 times the cash flow. So those are the things that we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about a couple of bonus things because they're very important to actually getting started and also preserving your wealth. And one of those things is mindset. And typically when you hear mindset, most people think of it, that it's fluff, right? Mindset. But mindset is almost like having the keys to the Ferrari, but not being able to drive and back out of the garage because the engine isn't working, right? Your mind is the engine that makes everything go. So it doesn't matter how pretty the exterior is. It doesn't matter how much gas you got in the car. If the engine isn't working right, if it's not optimized, that car ain't going nowhere, right? So we got to make sure that we are reprogramming, right, our mind so that we can level up in life. And I have some really solid frameworks that will allow you to do that. Last but not least, moat, right? A moat is a protection mechanism around a castle, right? So if you want to create generational wealth, leave generational wealth, you can't just have a business. You can't just have money saved. You can't just have money invested. You can't just have life insurance. You have to have a generational wealth plan that incorporates all of those things. And you have a strategy and a methodology for how your family is going to handle and preserve wealth, right? So those are the things we're going to talk about on the show. We're going to have some special segments. Not going to do a spoiler alert just yet, but a lot of these segments honestly could be standalone content, but I'm going to test to see how you guys respond to certain segments and the things that you really gravitate towards. We might even, parse them out as additional series, but right now, to keep it simple, we're just going to get it going, right? And that's a word for you guys. Right now, I'm talking to you guys in a hotel room in New York City, first week of the year in 2023, and I brought my tripod and I got an iPhone. That's it, right? That's it. No special camera crew, because if I wait every time I can connect with the videographer or get the perfect content, it'll never get out. And honestly, I wanted to start this series last year. And if I'm being really honest, on a conceptual level, I wanted to start this series in probably 2012, 2013, right? But I was so focused on growing my business, I kind of shunned content creation. I looked at it as a secondary thing. I didn't look at it as a primary thing. And now that our podcast airs every single week, and we've been hyper consistent about that for over a year and 3 months, I'm fairly consistent on Instagram. I want to provide way more value because, believe it or not, I'm only operating at about 5% of my capacity. That's it, right? I have so much more to give. And so if there's things that you want me to cover, things that you want to know, let me know. I'd be happy to cover it. If you like anything that I'm talking about, the way that I can do more of it is by you letting me know in the comments, liking, subscribing, sharing this more broadly so that we can help more people. If you could do that, it would mean the world. I'll continue to pour into you, and that pours into me and gets me excited to keep going. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to this first segment of Financial Freedom Fastlane.